You are watching the channel Educode. We are studying here the concept and the history of rhetoric. First of all, we have studied and tried to understand the concept and definition of rhetoric. That what is it? In this lecture, we are elaborating this topic further in the way that first we want to explore its historical development uh, as a field of study or the subject and art of rhetoric. Today, when the word rhetoric is heard, it is considered as a modern term and associated to politics. It means because rhetoric belongs to the art of speech making or the art of persuasion. So it deems that it is something a novel idea or the modern concept. Uh, but when we explore its historical development, it is its span in the history is some 2400 years before Christ. Greeks were among the first who had made a formal study of the ways of speech after establishing democracy. Here they mention that in ancient Greek, the form of government in their city states were democracy. And when we talk about democracy, it is about the will of the people, about the government by the people, for the people, and to the people. So, the status, the opinion, the decision making aspect of the government as far as its establishment, formation, and running of the government is concerned, people's interests and opinions are foremost. So, n- during ancient Greeks, the leaders, when undergoing the process of formation of the government and ruling the country of those city states, they had to convince the people in order to the smooth running of their government. That is why in those days, every politician, every ruler, and government official must had the skill or art of persuading the people in favor of them. From that, this knowledge or the subject had arisen. There came to happen two sides of scholars naming sophists, including Protagoras, Gorgias, and Isocrates, and the philosophers, including Plato, Aristotle, and Cicero, who belongs to Rome. From the debates of these two groups, there come forth the earliest theories of communication, expression, and argumentation, and the very concept of rhetoric. Uh, the pen is mightier than the sword. So, in the earliest, the most earliest periods, the rhetoric, its concept, its understanding uh, uh, came into being and established from two uh, groups of the people, which who are termed as sophists and the philosophers. Further, from the era of ancient Greeks to the Christian Middle Ages, still the use of rhetoric was in vogue. In the case that The teachings and learning of the rhetoric was in vogue in church. Uh, For example, the Christian Middle Ages, on the one hand, was very of rhetorical, but on the other, the Church also recognized its utility to defend the new religion. Because in those days, the religion of Christianity was propagating and spreading all across the Europe. So, to propagate and to convert the people of Europe to the new religion Christian, it needs to talk to them and communicate to them in a persuasive way. So, the need of rhetoric deems had become important for the clergy in those days. That is Saint Augustine's model for this eloquence in the Bible itself. From the 12th century on, rhetoric survived in law studies, preaching, and poetry. It means that through the course of the history, the importance of rhetoric had never diminished, but had continued in one form or the other, as we had seen that from 12th century onward, rhetoric survived not in the way religious field, and neither in the politics, but it had been used in the law studies, preaching, and poetry. Beginning in the 14th century, Francisco Petrarch and the humanist Renaissance restored rhetoric's claim. But this was also the age when the Caesarianism of Petrus once again called into question the integrity of rhetoric. The Counter Reformation viewed rhetoric as a useful instrument of propaganda. Romanticism dealt rhetoric a nearly lethal blow, reacting to a rigid formalism. During the course of the history, and during different ages, rhetoric was under discussion, had been under discussion, either in the way of gaining some favor or rejection and opposition. In England, during 17th and the 18th century, dozens of books were written on rhetoric. And in America, during American Revolution, there was a great work on rhetoric and persuasive writing, because during American Revolution, the leaders who were leading the revolutionary movement in order to gain independence of America from the British Kingdom, British Empire, they need this art of rhetoric or the persuasion. The art of rhetoric was resurrected many times in the 20th century, but always in the shadow of the Ramessian season. In the age of mass media, social media, the ability to communicate the message and to interpret the message of others is more important than ever. Because in these days, with the uh, uh, with the spread of technology and technological devices, or the networks, especially in the form of social media and mass media, the connectivity and the ability to communicate with each other across the globe has been increased manifolds. So when the communication happens, then it is, in order to communicate and understand or convey our messages to each other, it becomes important to convince each other also. Rhetoric has its importance as it relates itself to the literature as a civic art, music, knowledge, and course of the study. Now we are going to uh, study about the branches or divisions of the rhetoric as a field of study or the subject of the study. First of all, there is deliberative rhetoric. It refers to communications that are intended to persuade or dissuade a person to think or act in a certain way. It is about the future. Uh, Examples are political speeches, proposals, presentations, advertising, and social justice campaigns. All these examples suggest that during the conduction of these activities, the person who is undertaking such tasks, he either wants to persuade the masses or the people, or he wants to the other way people about the favor or the rejection of some particular idea, concept, or theory. The second branch or classification of division of rhetoric is judicial rhetoric. It refers to the communications that are intended to accuse or defend someone, that is, to justify whether actions were legal or ethical. It is about the past. Examples are courtroom proceedings, lawyer statements, jury deliberations, written laws, and personal justification. And the third division of the rhetoric is termed as epididactic rhetoric, and it is the kind of communication we use to praise or sometimes blame a person for their actions or accomplishments. It is about the present. For example, obituaries, eulogies, letters of recommendation, nomination speeches, etc., use the form of rhetoric which is termed as epidactic rhetoric.